to me is diet and nutrition and Wilson disease, so I'm strictly sticking to that. So Wilson's disease, also called hepatolenticular degeneration, is a rare inherited condition, and because the entire idea is rare diseases, probably doctor gave me this topic. Copper tends to build up in the body, especially in the liver, brain, and eyes. And excuse me, I know you all know this, but there should be somewhere like a starting of a talk. And symptoms often appear between ages 3 and 40, but they can appear at any time. And Wilson's disease affects about 1 in 30,000 people worldwide. And it is caused by mutation in a specific gene, ATP7B, although there are 2 or 3 variants of it also. And WHO puts the global prevalence of Wilson's disease at 30 to 100 million. It seems to be prevalent in India and often recognized as a geographical hotspot for this genetic copper metabolism disorder. Although we don't have any community-based data, hospital-based studies indicate that 7.6 to 19.7% of the pediatric liver disorders may be due to Wilson's disease annually. So before I move into the diet and nutrition and Wilson's disease, I think we should have a thing about what is the role of copper in health. It's an essential element in human nutrition. Just like iron, it exists in the cupric and cuprous state. Cupric is supposed to be very, very soft, very, very inert. It's a cuprous state that can set off a lot of damage to the body. And that is why you need protein, especially something like ceruloplasmin to ferry the copper. And the total body content of copper is around 50 to 110 milligrams. Bones and muscles seem to have 50% of the total copper, and remaining is present in heart, liver, brain, and blood. And in blood, it's 90% present as ceruloplasmin. And copper is a naturally occurring metal found in soil, water, and rocks, and is a trace mineral. And whenever you say a trace mineral or a micronutrient, it means that a daily intake, the need for the particular nutrient will be lesser than 100 milligrams. It's only numbers, but that doesn't mean it is not important. But still, because of the mathematically, you want to put a kind of tag on it, you call it a micronutrient. And also, it's essential for the action of diverse enzymes performing a broad range of physiological functions. Cytochrome oxidase, we all know how important it is. Your SOD, your superoxide dismutase, which is so important, is such an important antioxidant system. One of the few antioxidant systems. And so many a times, my students would question me why, when there are antioxidant systems in the body, why at all should you take fruits and vegetables, which you keep on always telling that you have to take? Because this is not sufficient to tide over our pro-oxidant damage. Monoamine and diamine oxidase, lysyl oxidase, and phenolase, few enzymes. It also prevents anemia by enabling the iron absorption, stimulating the synthesis of heme fraction, releasing iron from ferritin and liver, oxidation and reduction of ferrous iron to ferric state, which is happening continuously in the body as and when it is needed. The ferrous ion is an active ion, and ferric ion is a kind of a temporary storage form. Synthesis of phospholipids and thereby aids in myelin formation, plays an important role in immune function, DNA transcription, and also seems to play a role in maintaining lung elasticity. And if you look at the RDAs, like this is the American RDAs that I've picked up. We have the European also. So for now, we only follow this. It's around 900 micrograms for men and women, and it goes up to 1,300 micrograms for pregnant and lactating women, and slightly lower amount of 1,000 micrograms for younger ages. And if you look at the human diet, 1,100 to 1,400 milligrams. If you can just move over there, it can go up to 2 milligrams. Meaning to say that it is available to us, that much is available to us, but what we really need is only lesser than 1 milligram. So if you look at the metabolism, when you talk about the metabolism, the absorption and transport and excretion, the human GI system can absorb probably up to 30 to 40% of whatever is being presented to the body. And the main function of the ATP7B gene is to regulate the levels of copper in various tissues and organs. So it transports the copper into the Golgi apparatus for the ceruloplasmin synthesis and excretes. If there is anything excess over there, it excretes the copper into the bile. So this is a very sophisticated homeostasis mechanism of copper. copper, thereby protecting us against both copper deficiency and toxicity. Disturbance. One second. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we are able to hear you.
Okay, thank you. So, and also a small amount is excreted in the urine. So, this way, as and when it is needed, it is retained in the body. And if there is excess, it can be excreted mainly through the GI tract and very, very small amount in the urine. So, this gene is the one that ensures that copper is properly absorbed, transported, distributed throughout the body. If there is going to be any kind of disruption in the action of this gene, it leads to copper accumulation in certain tissues, especially the liver and brain, and this is how people end up with Wilson's disease, normal recessive disorder. So, what's the management? The cornerstone of Wilson's disease diet is limiting copper intake. So, where are you going to get your from? Obviously, from the food that we eat and the water that we drink and the copper cookware. So, when you look at these foods, like what I have done is I've really not separated them as excellent sources.
Audio is gone.
Dark unsweetened chocolate. Why dark unsweetened chocolate? Because any chocolate that you get in the market level will come down. So this is your cocoa powder and your dark unsweetened chocolate are excellent sources of copper. Mushrooms, cashews, sunflower, sesame seeds, chickpeas, all legumes actually. And probably some of the legumes you can put them even under like pulses, you can put them under moderate sources. Soy products definitely rich in copper. Avocados and nectarines. Nectarines are nothing but they look like peaches. They are the same family, but they have a when you look at peaches, they have a rougher skin, and nectarines have a smoother skin, and they are more sweeter. And all commercially dried fruits and cherries also. And if you look at some fruits like the papaya and banana, which are not listed over here, they will come under the moderate sources. Even your green leafy vegetables. And of course, barley, millet, wheat, bran, fresh sweet potatoes, brewer's yeast, and instant breakfast beverages. Especially Ensure Plus, chocolate drinks, soy-based, Ovaltine, Boost also for that matter, they're all supposed to be rich in copper. These should be avoided at least in the first year of treatment. Why in the first year of treatment? Because as soon as diagnosis is over, like copper levels in the body is not under control, and they're going to be traveling all over the place. And as all of us know that the ceruloplasmin levels are lesser, so at that particular point of time, it is better to follow a stringent diet because the physician or the doctor would have started them on anti-copper therapy, chelation therapy. So it's going to take some time. Nothing happens overnight. So until such time, it's better, I feel, to avoid these foods, which can be very, very challenging for the dietitian, for the patient. And if the patient, in case in the particular thing as a child, it's going to be very difficult, need a lot of family support. Anyway, what we should understand is diet alone cannot help, definitely, but it is a very, very useful addition to the management of the condition. Many guidelines recommend following a low copper diet for life, but there are lots of the latest articles or whatever they say it is not possible to do that. It is not possible to do that. It is not sustainable. So, once the medication start working in, we can go for a moderate sources can be given. And millets, since this talk is about millets, are very close to my heart. So whenever I get an opportunity, I talk about them. So your foxtail, your thinai, kambu, ragi, samai, gudravali, varagu, panivaragu, all of them are supposed to be a quite good source of copper. So you'll have to be careful about that. And reading labels, health foods and supplements should be scrutinized. Reading labels is in itself something very important. Many of us don't do it. We go to the supermarket, or you go to the wherever you're going, you pick up any food, you never turn and look at the labels, and most of the labels will be, the print on the labels will be so tiny that you cannot read also. But you should scrutinize for copper content. And maintaining a well-balanced diet and healthy body weight is important. It's not going to be easy for the first year or two. Then later, once you go for individualized diet counseling, it should be fine, and restrictive diets don't work. Overly restrictive diets are not going to help. And labels should be inspected even for multivitamins or other dietary supplements, and to make sure that copper is not included. It's better to go to a registered dietitian. Why do I say a registered dietitian? Because today you have a whole lot of people everywhere on the media, on the internet, so many people talking nutrition. Everybody is talking nutrition, but that's not the case. For diseases like this, it should be only handled by a registered dietitian. And also those of them who are vegetarians or vegans, you have to be careful, because if you're going to what you're going to choose for them, most of the legumes, most of the chickpeas and things that we eat contain copper. So how you're going to manage is very challenging for the dietitian. And those of them who have, apart from having this Wilson's disease, if they have food allergies or GI disorders like IBS, you will have to tailor make the diet for them. Infants and young children have special dietary needs. And water. So the second source is water. Actually, having said that, water is by itself is not a great source of copper. It's just normal, probably will have very less water. But the plumbing that we use to get the tap water is completely made of copper. Why people use copper for the plumbing? Simple, because if you put a copper material for your taps, it lasts almost for 50 years. Very resilient, very sustainable, and for normal people, it is not a problem, because only if that ATP 7B gene is not there, all these things are going to happen. So you have to be careful, and also it will be worthwhile to check whether you can easily get that done for tap water or whatever. You can find out how much of copper is present in that by giving it for an analysis. There are lots of labs that will do it. If copper levels are higher than what is being put over here, then you can't change your home for that. You cannot do anything much. You'll have to find out solutions. Allow the water to run for a while. First thing you open in the morning, allow it to run for quite a bit of time, and then use a filter. That will be useful. And if suppose you hot water component over there, never, you should never have any hot water, because copper will easily leach into hot water. That's the idea. So copper plumbing oxidizes and releases little to no copper into free flowing water. So continue to use the tap water for cooking or drinking, but allow it to run for at least half a minute or until cool. Water filtration systems really can help, like what we have at home, the RO system or whatever. And the RO system, the problem with the RO system is you'll have to use double the amount of water to get the water that you are using. But that's okay. This is a totally different situation. So it's better to use reverse osmosis for metal removal. And the filters have to be changed. Anything in life has to be maintained. So maintenance is very important. And patients are advised to drink only cold tap water for drinking and cooking, and to avoid drinking hot tap water. And patients with Wilson's disease, during the first year of treatment, as I said, they have to be careful, and supervision by a registered dietitian may help to avoid overly restrictive meal patterns or undue anxiety about that. And also, if there are, if there, like you have to do a nutritional assessment. Nutritional assessment is your ABCD, as in you find out the height, weight. Depending, suppose they are small little children, you will be looking at different indices, as in head circumference or mid-arm circumference, linear height, and parameters like that. So if there is anything lacking over there, supplements have to be given, but taking care to avoid excess copper intake. So again, a person who knows their work as a registered dietitian would be the best person to advise. Cookware. Unlike copper or bronze, cookware can leach copper content into foods, especially when more acidic foods such as tomatoes are added. And today, what we see everybody with a copper water bottle, copper drinking mug. I have nothing against that. There are lots of studies to say that if you pour water into copper vessels and leave it for 4 to 5 hours, most of the E. coli and most of the villainous bacteria, they simply perish. So it seems they don't know the mechanism. So that is one thing. But you should not overdo. You can drink from a cup. That is for the regular people, for healthy people I'm talking about. You can drink from copper drinking mug or a copper water bottle, provided you clean it properly. If you see those greenish discoloration, it means that it is getting oxidized, not safe for you. So maintenance is very, very important. which is not there with your glass and steel vessels. So you'll have to be careful about that. So anyway, for Wilson's disease, unlined copper mixing bowls and drinking mugs should be avoided, and use of copper utensils for cooking food should be discouraged. So we have passed through many periods in our life. Probably they've used, even now if you go to a restaurant, they will serve food, especially if you go for a Indian restaurant, they will serve food in copper, small little dishes. That is to actually, it's a nice display of food and to increase the ambience. But after you finish your pulav or your curry or whatever you see, inside it will be almost, it will not be copper, it will be white. So all of them should be, all cooking utensils, copper utensils should be lined with thing. Whether you line them or not, for Wilson's disease, you stay away from all these things. And this is bronze, which is known as Vengalam, an alloy of primarily copper and tin. So it's almost copper. And most people use that. But if you look at the inside, you can see that it is the tin over there. Tamil we tell EM. So copper vessels, if you're using them in your cooking, you should maintain them properly. Whether restaurants do that or not, I don't know, but we have to be wary of all these things. So it is necessary to pay attention for in Wilson's disease, not only to copper restriction, but also for qualitative components of the diet. Protein is an important part of nutrition under liver disease. If they have progressed to something like as in cirrhosis stage 1 or whatever, you'll have to, protein plays a big role. Dairy products and whey proteins are good sources of protein, not containing so much of copper. Sorry, there's a spelling mistake over there. Therefore, they can be used without restrictions, provided they don't have lactose or milk protein intolerance. Reduced consumption of sugar, refined carbohydrates, trans fats is also recommended. And dietary recommendations must take into consideration the nutritional status of the patient, as in protein, energy, whether there is malnutrition, whether there is sarcopenic obesity, or it is just obesity, a normal body weight, degree of liver damage. If it has progressed into something like, if there is a time lapse between the presence of the disease and diagnosis. And individuals with compromised swallowing ability due to neurological Wilson's disease may require measures to reduce aspiration, using of thickeners for liquids, and proper supervision by a speech specialist. If the swallowing is severely impaired and if aspiration is going to be a problem, enteral feeding, as in tube feeding, can be initiated because it lowers the risk of aspiration. But if you look at most of the commercially available tube feeding preparations, they will have added copper. So that is going to pose a problem. So what we can do is, you can go for homemade low copper tube feeds. Like, you can get the help of the dietitian, find out what are the foods low in copper and try to deliver. That's one thing. Very tedious. You have to be careful. And when you prepare the tube feeds, if you're going to do it by yourself at home, it's quite a serious issue, in the sense you'll have to be very mindful about what you're doing. Option 2 is, you can use concentrated commercially available formulas to meet 50% of the calorie needs, and the remaining can be, you can choose some kind of whole milk or a carbohydrate modular product. A modular product, as what all of you all know, is you give it separately. You don't mix it along with the not 3-in-1 formula. And option 3 will be, you can go for commercially prepared pediatric formulas. Simple common sense that the RDAs for copper for younger children or infants is lesser. So you can manage that, and you can try to, in larger volumes, you can still provide nutritionally adequate options for adults. We don't have anything much that we can do. A standard multivitamin without copper is recommended to ensure adequate micronutrient intake. Once treatment has been established, it is you can relax a little bit, and you can bring in the moderate sources of copper, like as in I told you, your green leafy vegetables, your pulses, and freshwater fish is supposed to be low in copper. So we can capitalize on all that. Only if you're a vegetarian, you'll have to do more thinking and more planning. And whatever you do without the physician on board, it's better not to do anything. And if the patient wants to discuss any complementary or alternative or supplements, uh, we have to be very careful. You have to find out whether it contains copper. You need to really tell them. So it is an uncommon but eminently treatable genetic disorder. It may be present at any age. Lifelong treatment is necessary. If diagnosed and treated early, people with Wilson's disease can live a normal life. And thank you.